Well, good afternoon. Oh, lads, I'm at work today and I'm absolutely exhausted. And I'm thinking about my life choices. And I'm like, oh. Like my son often says to me, Mum, you sent me out to work when I was 16. I think he was 16. He said, and I'm working now all my life. And I'm thinking to myself, I fucking went out to work when I was 15. And like a lot of our generation lads went out working at 15. And and we worked hard. Like we were workhorses. We are a workhorse generation. And like, I'm fucking 52 now and I'm still working. But anyway, when I started my work life, I started in hotels. Here in Tralee, you either started in factories or you started in hotels. I should have fucking started in factories. But anyway, started in hotels. And I remember myself and the girls, because I was from Shannakill, and we were out standing one summer's day, standing around saying, what we do? We go downtown, we do this, we do that. And a friend of ours pulled up in a car and he said, lads, what are you at? And we said, nothing. He said, right, do you want to come and do a day's work? And we thought, yeah, grand. So we were told, right, you need to wear a white blouse, a black skirt or a navy skirt, and a pair of shoes and tights and whatever. We were 15. We didn't own white blouses and skirts and whatever. So we literally went in and raided our mother's wardrobes and rocked down to this hotel. And this was a time, lads, when the club socials were absolutely huge. And I remember my first day working in the Brandon Hotel, and it was the Stack Social, and it was 1,000 people were inside in the Brandon Conference Centre. It was just huge. Like people were everywhere, tables, and I remember thinking, oh my God, like at 15 years of age, what are we going to do? And when you went in, then you met the person you were working with, because normally you worked with a person and you had 3 or 4 tables depending on the numbers of waitresses and whatever. So I think that night we had 3 tables, and I remember the girl, there was no bitching, there was none of that, and she was saying, right, you've got to do this, 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 and like there was always a carrier and then a clearer. And for that particular one, I was the clearer because she had to carry out all the dinners. And we were using the big, huge trays. And 10 dinners you would have to come out with. And you'd have rings on the plates. Like, we were children running. They were so heavy, lads. We would be running out. But, yeah, and I remember going down there and my friends were at the other side of the hall. This was a huge hall. And just thinking, Jesus, and just got a buzz out of it. Like, thought, oh my God, this is amazing. And then when we were finished the shift and we got through it, and there was no time to think. And then you were coming out, clearing up, and then there was a supervisor standing in the middle of the floor and saying, what's your name? And I said, oh, Lisa Martyn. And I said, can you work next Saturday and Sunday, breakfast and lunch? And you were like, yeah. You didn't even think, lads. You'd a memory that you would remember. If she booked you a month in advance, you knew exactly what shift she booked you for. If you booked me now, I'd have to fucking write it down for tomorrow because I can't remember nothing. But myself and my friends worked down there for a long, long time, and we didn't get paid by the hour, lads. We got paid by the shift. So, like, you had the breakfast shift 7 to 12, you had the lunch shift 12 to 3, you had the dinner shift 6 to finish, that could be any time, and then you had the setup shift, right? You got £15 a shift. So then when you went to collect your wages on a Thursday inside in this hotel, you went in and it was all the information had been handed over by the supervisor. So you went in and you knew, okay, I'm getting paid for 6 shifts. So you would have 6 shifts written on your brown envelope and then the cash for your 6 shifts inside in the envelope. You were fucking loaded that Thursday, lads. Once you got paid, you were loaded. And then if there was a problem, you had to go back then to the supervisor and say, look, I'm short for this shift, whatever. And there was never a problem. Like, you always got your money. But but I remember when I was pregnant with my son, like, I literally finished work, I don't even know how many months I was, but I went back really soon after having him. Because like we just had to go back to work. And you didn't mind the breakfast shift but the only thing was you had to get up fucking early for it, like, and we were young, and then like you didn't do anything during school, so it was always kind of after school or at the weekends, or sometimes you wouldn't go to school because you get about 3 shifts, can you do 12 to finish? And you were like, that's fucking, that's 3 shifts, like that's a setup and everything there. So, and the setups then, lads, were a nightmare. So you have to remember, like, everything happened at the weekend. So all the cutlery and everything for 1,000 people and glasses and everything was washed. But then it sat there all week and there'd be remnants of food. So then when you had to do a setup shift, oh my God, I can still smell the buckets of cutlery and the smell out of it, you know, the way gone off food, you know, bits of food, even though the stuff was washed, but it'd just be bits of food, and the weight of these buckets, like, and you'd bring them out into the dining room because you'd have to set up again, and you'd be bringing out these big pots of hot water, and then tablecloths, you'd be polishing all the cutlery, and then you'd to polish all the glasses. So if you'd 800 people sitting, you'd to polish 1,600 forks, 1,600 knives. Do you know, then if there was a fish starter and soup, and oh my God, so you always had one person polishing cutlery, one person polishing glasses, one person putting the tablecloths on, one person going around with all the crockery. Like, Jesus Christ. And you know, the way you knew that you had to get it done in a certain amount of time, you know, and then somebody else would come in to take over. But so you did work, like, there was no dodging it, like, you worked. And yeah, but you know what, they were good times. And that time then in the Brandon, like, there was a big long corridor, and you could have 60 or 70 staff lined up ready to go and collect soup. Like, there could be soup, sorbet, dinner, and then you had to do the veg, and you'd have to do the silver service. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm a queen at silver service now, because you know what, it was just bait into you. You know, the way you just it just made life easier if you could do it. So I had no problem doing silver service, you know. And if you were a good worker, you were called in for shifts and shifts and shifts. And obviously I was a good worker. So I stayed in that hotel for about 10 years. But like, we worked hard. But like, when you think, like, we weren't paid by the hour, we were literally paid by the shift. Like, it's unheard of now. Like, if I said to my girls, go down to that hotel there and work £15 an hour, they'd say, go away, girl, I'm not getting out of the bed for that. Go away. Not a hope. Like, they wouldn't do it. None of this generation would do it. But we just done it and got on with it. And you know what? Then we had our own money, so we were independent. And yeah, but it was just, you know, it was fun times, and I met the most amazing people, and like, people that are still my friends. And then I moved on to another hotel, and it was much the same thing. It was just a generation where, you know, socials and different things were just massive. They're not so big now. And then, you know, the way we lived off our tips. So the ones that you expected the tips from, do you know, the ones with the marbles in their mouth, and they thought they were all fucking that. They wouldn't leave you a crust of bread. They wouldn't leave you fucking nothing. And then it was just the ordinary Joe So's lads. You'd see them taking out the plate, and you'd be delighted, because there'd be two of you working on a station. So then ye divided that between the two of you. And, you know, somebody would call you and say, that's for ye now. And you'd say, oh, thanks very much. You'd be fucking delighted. Do you know the way? And that money then was just divided by between the two of you. And then there was like tours we would do. And then they would leave money at the end of each tour. And then at the end of the season, you would get a cut out of that money. Like, you were loaded. It was just extra money all the time. But you know what, lads? It's just, yeah. And then, like, that's why we were able to go out. Like, and like, friends of mine, I worked with loads of like people that I'm still friends with. We all worked in hotels. And do you know what, lads? We got what we needed ourselves. You know, we were able to go out, and we were able to buy what we wanted to buy. Like, but we lived hand to mouth every week, you know. But it was just, they were good times. And that was a time, like, when the general manager of a hotel was the be all and end all. Like, I remember starting in the Brandon, and the manager, like, would have his posse running after him, and he wouldn't look at you. We were like shit in his shoe. But then I remembered the second manager that came in. He was lovely, and he's still here in town. He was just a nice, down to earth man. And like, I worked in that hotel for a long time, and I remember then, because the bar was there, I wanted to get trained in the bar. And I remember what kept saying, will you train me in the bar? Will you train me in the bar? And then one night I remember sitting in the staff room and getting ready to go home after a shift, and he said, Lisa, and I said, what? And he said, do you still want to work in the bar? And I said, yeah, because obviously Spirals 1, 2 and 3 was there. He said, right, come on. And I literally remember going in, and my first order was 3 pints of Guinness and 2 vodka and Coke, and I was like, fuck. And here I am, like, pulling the pint of Guinness. And you know what, lads, it worked out. But it was just absolutely amazing, the training we got. And we didn't realise. But like, and I worked in bars as well throughout my life. Do you know, the way I went on, and I worked in different bars. But I had plenty of confidence, because I was trained well. I was just fucking thrown into the deep end, and that was that. But you know what, lads, good times, and made great friends. That would be friends for life.